Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Talking Acquisition. This is the weekly high-energy, informative, and slightly opinionated view on all things acquisition, procurement, and government contracting related. This is the place where the contracting community, the acquisition community, and our industry partners connect, talk, listen from each other. My name is William Randolph, and I'm your host, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, my colleague, my partner, and dear friend, Soraya Carrera. Hello, Soraya. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful, Will. How about you?
Doing great, doing great. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I'm pretty excited about this week's show because we have a special guest. But before I introduce our guest, I'm going to give our little podcast disclaimer that no one has ever heard before. So here we go. Our podcast shares information and views on a variety of topics that impact the federal acquisition community. Our goal is to provide thought leadership and perspective, not to criticize, judge, or render political opinions, although we may have a few of those. We provide this free service because we are former federal acquisition professionals and leaders. We believe that the creativity, innovation, and effectiveness of our community is unleashed when we share knowledge, information, and learning. We hope you enjoy our podcast, and we welcome the views and comments of our colleagues across the public and private sectors. And now I have the great privilege of introducing our guest, someone who I've known for quite some time and have worked with on and off over the years. Always a pleasure to work with this gentleman. He is one of the pillars in our community. Let me introduce Tim Cook, or Timothy W. Cook. He is currently the owner, president, and CEO of ASI Government, a limited liability corporation, previously known to many of us who've been in the business for a while as Acquisition Solutions Incorporated. Tim joined ASI in 2013 as president of the company's consulting division and was later selected to be the president and CEO in 2015. And in 2017, he relaunched the company as the owner to continue its great work in helping create, guide, and implement at-scale innovations in federal acquisition. He is also an active member in our community through many industry associations. First, the American Council for Technology Industry Advisory Council, or IAC, the Professional Services Council, the National Contract Management Association, and the Intelligence and National Security Association. Tim has had a long and illustrious career in shaping organizations and building and further developing them. Without further ado, allow me to introduce Tim Cook. Tim, thank you for joining us today.
Well, Soraya, I hardly recognize myself. It's wonderful to be introduced to you. I'm going to hire you to do that in the future.
Happy to do it. The fee is low. Now that I'm a consultant, I can charge.
That's right.
But I'm having a lot of fun with ASI for almost the last going on 10 years. 2013, I joined the company, and it's coming around the corner. So just having a blast with this company. What we do based on our client intimacy, understanding of the customer space, innovative thinking and solutions, and the skills of our workforce, we're able to help fill some gaps for government clients who are in the acquisition business. So very happy to be doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Will because I know he's anxious to start asking questions. And if he asks trick questions, I'll jump in and fix it. Don't worry. Go ahead.
Well, Tim, thank you so very much for joining us. And the kind of the topic for the day I'd like to talk about is just kind of the progress of acquisition support services over time. I know you've played in the GovCon space for a while, but of recent, you've seen the transition where acquisition support services started and then where they are today, and maybe even talk a little bit about what you think is going to be going forward. What's your thoughts on the community and the utilization and value of acquisition support services?
Yeah, so I'll just start with what I perceive to be the underlying sort of problem statement. Which is a lack of what I call slack in the community. The requirements are intense. They have to be done when they have to be done, and there's no time, really to step back, study, improve, create, and so that continues to be the case. I am so pleased to witness today what I perceive to be a much needed revolution almost in the way that many people are thinking about acquisition. It's not just work harder, it's work smarter. And, with Soraya on the call, I can't help but think, about a topic we no doubt will address, which is the reason for the pill. The innovation lab is about working smarter. And so, and that's what I care about too, right? So while we're happy to help fill some of the gaps just with people who are experts, we're also very interested as a company. And I think the industry is turning to this as well because the demand signals are there. We want to work smarter. So that's been the evolution that I've seen. It's been, sort of from just overpowering the problem to really intentionally working smarter.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. When I took over as chief procurement officer at DHS, I was determined we got to find a way to fix this because the luxury isn't there for waiting. Our enemies are not governed by the FAR. They don't have a GAO or those entities looking over their shoulders. They can do whatever the heck they want. So we got to be able to get out there and fulfill those mission objectives as quickly and as effectively and efficiently as possible. And we in the acquisition community have to find solutions. And to find those solutions, we got to find every single flexibility within the four corners of the FAR because there's no time for legislation to be passed, as I like to remind people. So let's find those flexibilities. Let's be creative. Let's be innovative, and let's figure it out. And I know that through your great work, not only as a company, but also in participating with many of these industry associations and special group projects, you've come to the forefront with some of these things. And in fact, I want to kind of highlight something that you and I are working on together because I'm pretty proud of what we've done in the past and what we're going to be doing in the future. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the special project that you're working on right now for ACT-IAC.
Great. Thanks so much, Soraya. And I'm really happy to be working with you on it because who better to crack a nut than Soraya. It's a tough nut to crack. What we're trying to do is to help the government understand the best ways to buy and what to buy when it comes to the game-changing technologies that are out there. And by that, I mean the pervasive use of cloud in the commercial sector and the adoption of cloud, the stresses of cybersecurity and prevention of bad actors coming in and doing bad things, and the evolution of artificial intelligence, which, like cyber, is going to permeate every solution in IT. It's going to be there. And these are all converging in offerings from cloud service providers. And you can already go out to cloud service providers and buy most of these services. But they need to be laced together in a way to solve a problem. So what's the government problem that we're solving? So the project we're working on, thanks to Soraya's coaching, is solving use case problems, not technology for its own sake, but technology created to solve a government business problem, mission problem. And so I'm really excited about that. We're building on the work that went years before, which the PIL was very involved in under Soraya's leadership, creating the periodic table of acquisition innovations. These innovations will be helping people to adopt and adapt the best examples that are out there already for buying these use case solutions. And by a use case, I mean something like a use case could be something in the Chico arena where they're helping to hire people or retain people or train people. Something in the customer service arena, perhaps, or something in a more IT vein.
I love the project because it's focused on mission outcomes, right? These are the things that we buy to solve mission problems, as opposed to just talking about the technology. We have a lot of experts that can talk about the technology and they'll participate and help us. But what we really want to focus on is what are you buying and how are you buying it? And how do you look at this? And how do you evaluate it and think about it? So I'm really excited about it. Of course, working with Tim is always a pleasure. And the many volunteers that we have through the ACT-IAC, both federal and commercial volunteers. So Will, I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you're itching to ask a question.
Well, I do have one. Tim, I'd like for you to put your business leader, business owner hat on and think about what's transpired over the last 2022 24 months, the pandemic and the pandemic response. What have you learned as a business leader and from the shift to home, hybrid workplace? And is there anything that you think is going to stick from the service delivery perspective to government? Or do you think it's going to, now that things are opening back up, the pendulum is just going to swing back?
Yeah, so I mentioned customer intimacy is one of our value props. We are very close to our customers, and we learn many of the same lessons that the government has learned during this period, which is, oh my gosh, we can really do this in a remote way. We don't have to be sitting next to our government client in order to perform the work, unless it's classified or unless it's got to have a special place, right? But it has actually made us, I think, more productive in doing the work we do. People are reasonably consumed by their tasks, and so they work on them at all hours, and they are focused on getting the job done. And I'm just really grateful to the government and to my team for enabling us to continue to work during this time, and if anything, to be more productive. I think COVID accelerated many of the trends that were already, making an appearance, and I feel like we got advanced maybe 5 years or 10 years in two.
Yeah.
That's fair. Thank you so much, Soraya.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. Although I still think that there is that desire to bring the teams together periodically, not all the time, but it also creates great opportunities to hire talent too, because now you're not concentrating your talent in one business area or one geographical business area. So, I'm excited by the possibilities that lie in the future. I want to talk a little bit about industry and government relations, because I know that's a topic that's always very near and dear to my heart, as you know, Tim. But I want to get your thoughts as we've gone through this pandemic and as we've evolved into these new ways, if you will, or changed ways of doing business. What do you think is going on with industry and government communications? Talk to me a little bit about what you see and what you think needs to happen going forward.
Yeah, so I think it's a mix, right? It depends on the organization and the people leading that organization. I consider the folks who are forward-leaning to be opening up the aperture a little bit on communications, both sides, government and industry. Industry always has a thirst for more, right? So wanting more information about what solutions people are looking for, what are the problems they're trying to solve, and trying to, get the best information that they can about that. Meanwhile, government in the past has been maybe a little bit more reluctant to share much of that information, fearing that they'll inadvertently give an advantage to someone that nobody really wants to happen. Industry doesn't want that to happen. The government doesn't want that to happen. And so maintaining that level playing field of competition, which is absolutely critical. Competition is what drives this business. But I would not forget the word collaboration, which I think we'll come back to later. So maybe I've lost the question in this long rambling answer.
No, you covered it. I mean, what I'm interested in is your thoughts on, have we done a better job of collaborating through this pandemic, and where do you think we need to go to next? I mean, I know you're extremely familiar with the OFPP Mythbusters, and they bring them up and they dust them off, and I applaud them for doing that, by the way, that they dust them off periodically, as my good friend Luke would say. And then moving forward, what do we need to be doing? How do we encourage people to do this a little bit better?
Yeah, so that is a great question. And I do think it depends on the context. So I think that there are still opportunities to communicate, collaborate more. I've even heard people in government at places like U.S. Digital Services talk about co-creation of requirements with industry. Now that's a pretty bold idea, okay? But you have some people thinking outside the box, even outside those four corners in a way, right?
I like that. Co-creation of requirement. I actually worded it a different way. I had a program manager, this was years ago, come up and ask me, when should I start talking industry? I said, whenever you know that you need something. You don't have to have a piece of paper. You don't even have to have a really well-articulated problem statement. Just get in front of them and tell them, here's the problem I think I'm trying to solve. They're going to help you shape that problem, understand it better through their questions, and then you can just come at them, bits at a time. Industry, you said it, is hungry for information. And the more they can participate in helping you better understand your requirements, the better they're going to understand the requirements.
Yeah.
They know the right questions to ask. So I encourage it. So I love your answer, but I like that co-creation of requirements. I wrote it down. I always write catchy phrases so I can use them later. Will,
So Tim, I'd like to ask you about what have you seen in terms of the communication, the collaboration? What tools, what strategies have you seen that have worked really well? I think there is, at least one that I know of and that I've been informed has been around for a while, but it seems like it's catching some adoption now, which is the concept of advisory down selects. So along those lines, maybe there's other strategies and tactics that are being used. Could you share, based on your vantage point, what you're seeing across government? Do you see other areas or other strategies that are being deployed that are enabling of this desire for increased communication and collaboration?
Yeah, great, perfect. So I'm a big fan of one, okay, and it is a combination of techniques, modular contracting, breaking larger procurements up into smaller pieces, executing on them in a modular fashion so that you can assess your outcomes along the way. And very much like investors who are investing in products, take a look every now and then at what return you're getting on your investment. So measure that rate of return. Invest more if you're getting a good rate, or turn off the program if you're not. And I think that creates a natural collaboration and teamwork between the government customer and the provider of the service that really requires getting in the trenches together. And even pre-award, if you do this down select, advisory down select, or even mandatory, it doesn't really matter, down select, then what you're doing is you're getting companies that are closer and closer to what you really want in terms of a solution, right? And so I've observed that people will go from, 40 proposals down to 10, down to 5, down to 2, and then there's a kind of a fly off between the two. And I think that process is efficient. It can go really fast. IRS is claiming to do it in 30 days for the initial award. And I've seen many others do it fast. Speed matters in this business, and the winnowing down of the solution providers can happen really quickly. And I think the communication that happens and the teamwork that happens in that environment is pretty incredible.
So Tim, the follow-on argument I have heard many say, and so I'd love to hear your point from a industry perspective, is the earlier you know that you're not as competitive as someone else in the race,
Yep.
the faster you can take your toys and go home or redeploy them elsewhere. Your resources, you can apply them, find a better competitive environment to deploy those resources. On its face, that sounds reasonable, but as an operator, if you will, Tim, in industry, what's your opinion of that?
Yeah, so that's a great point. There are two kinds of tigers out in the forest. One is like default is go, I'm going to bid on everything, and the other is default is no, I'm not going to bid unless I'm really convinced I can win. Okay, so and there's some in between, right? But by and large, regardless if you're a go tiger or a no tiger, you need to know as soon as possible if you have a chance of winning, because precious resources, and these are blood, sweat, and tears, guys, when people get in a proposal environment, and it's hard work, and it is the most intense work that industry does, is in that proposal tank environment.
Thank you.
It's also costly. I mean, yes, it's resource intensive, but it's also costs money to bid on these contracts. I've held multiple sessions on that and tried to help people understand. Industry makes the same investments, if not more, than what we're making as we're putting together solicitation. In fact, many, many years ago at a conference, we talked about the fact that you could actually overlay the two processes over one another, right? The government's planning, strategizing, planning, execution process, you could follow that in industry, and it really follows the same pattern, and the investments are significant. So, I believe in down selects. I was more, I'm a little bit more intense, so I like mandatory, but it's okay. I'm willing to accept advisory. My pill convinced me of that advisory is just as good. And industry generally follows the guidance in those down selects. They either, if they come back and bid, they come back with stronger teams, or they say, you know what, not going to bite this one off, going to go off and talk and learn from another one. So another things that I'd like to touch on a little bit is the workforce itself. From your perspective, from where you sit with the customers that you're dealing with, and by the way, I love the phrase customer intimacy. I like that. But with the customers that you work, what do you think the government needs to be doing better when it comes to the acquisition workforce in terms of not only what we train them to do, but how we train them and how we look at them and enable them to do their job?
So that is a complicated question, Soraya. I'm not sure I can do it justice in a minute or two.
Take 2 minutes. No, just kidding.
No, that's I know you've struggled with that problem for a long time, and I think you've done maybe one of the best jobs in government of anybody in a couple of decades at solving that problem. And it really is being for leadership to generate the confidence of the workforce that understand what they're dealing with, and they're dealing with so much more now than they have been in the recent past. They have all these executive orders and requirements to get this and that and the other thing, cyber, and they're going to bring in climate. And how do I get all that in my procurement? They need to know that leadership is behind that, and the training needs to keep up with the changing world. And I think one thing I've really been impressed by is how much of the work of government it gets squeezed through this tube, right? It is just amazing. And the people who do it are some of the most important people to the mission outcomes of government anywhere, okay? And there's not enough appreciation of that, but I certainly appreciate it. I'm not just saying that, guys. This is real.
Oh no, I know you mean it. I just by your commitment and dedication to the profession. One other comment that I wanted to throw in there. I always talk, and I've always used the word failure, right? When I talk about when you try new things, sometimes it's not going to go right. I used to be gentle and say, you'll stub your toe, and then I decided, no, you'll fail. You'll fail. And I use that word because it is a strong word, and it's a 4-letter word, and it starts with an F, and it scares people. But we need to acknowledge that to get to success, you're going to have some failures, and you're going to take those failures and learn from them. And it's something that we need to do a lot more of with our workforce, to enable them and help them understand that when you're trying to do something better, you're probably going to stub your toe. You're probably going to fail. As long as you're learning from that failure, we're going to support you. Your leadership is going to support you. There's a difference between a performance failure and a failure because you were trying to do something different and better and more effectively. So a huge advocate of that. And I appreciate your taking on that question. And I have to ask this one, Will, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'll shut up and go away. And because he will never ask you this question, but I have to. So I am a big advocate of best value procurements. Not a huge fan of LPTA, although I understand its purpose and why we have it in the toolkit. My colleague and my dear friend, Mr. Will, and I kind of had a shouting match one day because he said, oh, no LPTA. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on LPTA versus the actual best value or the trade-off? Because LPTA is a form of best value. It's in the same section of the FAR. It's really part of the continuum. But basically the difference between the trade-off and the LPTA, and when and why should we use them?
Yeah, so sure. And I think I will resonate with your opinion. So there's a place for each of the different contract types. to the different competition types. And if you choose wrong, you're going to pay a price for that.
Exactly.
And I think that in some cases, in many cases, that involve services, which are half of what government buys these days, is services.
Yeah.
That's a reasonably complex buy, and it's really hard to do that in a. I mean, I've seen people suffer where they do an LPTA on a big services job, and the contractor who won is not able to provide the people that they committed to provide, and so you end up in like contract administration hell. You know, how do we get well here? Because you're not able to provide the people at the rates that you committed to.
Right.
Now that's at one end of the spectrum, but at the other end of the spectrum are the things that are, you know, more like pencils and pens and computers, where they're pretty well specified in advance, and you just need a low price.
Right.
So.
Yeah, what I've often said is for LPTA to work, you got to define technically acceptable. Usually, if you can define it with some form of standards so that you kind of equalize, for lack of a better term, or make the proposals equivalent, then it's okay to pick low price. But you got to have some minimum standard, because acceptable in and of itself, to me, has always meant just okay. And I don't know, I'm crazy, but in my government, in the services that I'm providing to the people that I care about, I want to make sure it's better than just okay. I think they deserve a little bit better than that. But I'm going to turn it over to Will, because he has no passion about this at all whatsoever.
I have nothing else to say on the topic. I've said it all on LPTA. But Tim, you did touch on a question, a topic that I want to tease out a little bit, and that was finding the right talent in this environment. When you think about tight labor market, even in an acquisition environment that has over time never seemed to have enough people and talent in the pipeline to do the work. ASI over time, my opinion, has been very good at attracting and keeping talent. What's the secret? What has been your secret to attracting and attaining talent to deliver good solutions to government?
Well, I'm gonna help out my friend Tim. If he answers that question, his competitors are all listening in.
I'm going to be careful, Soraya, how I answer.
Yeah, you might want to dance around that one a bit.
Here for Coke or anything else. No, I think for us, it's been really that because the company was founded during a time of really tremendous change, able to establish a reputation for making a difference, introducing performance-based contracting to government, introducing a number of other, you know, strategic sourcing and category management things. So it created a desire among professionals to want to work with us. And we've done everything in our power, you know, to try to facilitate the continuation of that by doing hard things, by making a difference, by being in front of these industry association projects, and trying to create the reality and the impression that this is a fun place to work.
So Tim, I want to follow up on that one, if I may, Soraya. I just want to follow up on that one. You talked about doing hard things. One of the things that now has a space in our lexicon is customer experience. You know, we got a thing now. You know, the president has an executive order. It's a thing now.
That thing is there. Nothing against the president, but that thing was there. Okay, I just want to toss that one out. It was there.
You know, Soraya, you're right where I was going. I think we've always had the tenets of customer experience for the most savvy, the most effective contracting organizations have always had some customer experience-ness in them. We just now have a title and a lexicon, but in terms of bringing that opportunity, or bringing this, or leveraging the opportunity now that we have in the customer experience space, what are you all doing? Have you all been thinking about it?
Yeah, we have, and we've actually adapted one of our practice areas, which is organizational development design, My own experience with customer experience goes back to the late 1990s. There was a book published called The Experience Economy, and it talks about firms like Disney and others who create an amazing experience for their customers. And it rolls off their backs, right? Like it's no effort at all. They make it look easy.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I would aspire to do if I were trying to help a government organization create a better customer experience.
Mhm.
We love what Mike Darius is trying to accomplish, at State Department with his experience initiative, and so we have people in the company who, have converted their skills to how do we not just do organizational design development work, but how do we tailor that for the purpose of creating a better buying experience
Right.
for our customers.
Yeah, I've long held, and I actually for years I should have like coined the phrase and trademarked it because I've been talking about customer experience for many years. And the way I always described it wasn't what the answer is that you give your customer, it's how you make them feel.
Yeah.
Do they feel that they can trust you, that you understand what they're after, that you're going to try to get them to where they're going? And look, they don't always get the answer that they want, but they get that feel, that knowledge that they got a partner in the problem and somebody's going to try to help them solve. And what I used to always tell folks was, if you gave people the right experience, they will come back to you. They'll want to talk to you. I've said that to companies, I've said that to people. So I certainly agree with that, and I applaud the initiative, and I'm a huge fan of customer experience.
If I could just jump in for a second.
Please.
Attitude and mindset really drive that, and you can feel it when you care.
Yes. And that's true also for employees, because I was going to say the customer experience is the same thing as saying leadership matters.
Yep.
A good leader knows that they have to make their employees feel appreciated, cared for, valued, help them understand how they fit into the overall picture, and be able to support them in the good and the bad. It's real easy to give praise when things are going well. The tough one is when you have to go sit down to talk to an employee when something didn't go well and they're already feeling down, and you got to help them understand, well, here's why it didn't go well, and here's what we're going to do to make sure that goes better the next time, right?
Yeah.
That's tough. And that's where leadership counts. And leadership counts when it comes to customer experience and employee engagement. So I always highlight that, because at the end of the day, it's what leadership does that drives the rest of the organization. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, because I'm going to jump on a topic that I know is going to be near and dear to your heart. Did you want to add anything to that?
Who, me? No, I think you summarized it well.
Okay, let's talk economics, because we are at a stage in our government. And in fact, I was listening to a podcast this morning about just the impact that our current economic conditions, the inflation and everything, is having on our vendor community. And in fact, with the discussion on the podcast, it was Roger Waldron's podcast. I do tend to listen to him. I'm a fan of his. But anyway, in the podcast, he was talking to Tim Allen, as a matter of fact, about the impact that inflation is having and how vendors are being affected, and what can be done to help the government help industry, because industry is not going to be delivered at the prices that they currently have, not even at the rate of inflation, right? And so what can be done? How do we move these economic price adjustment proposals faster? How do we get GSA to modify schedules a little bit quicker? That was real. I'm summarizing it greatly, but that was basically just the conversation. And I know that you're an economist by degree. So I was just kind of curious about your thoughts on what's going on in the world, how it impacts pricing, and what you think can and should be done going forward.
Yeah. Okay, great question to an economist. Be careful.
It's a setup. You can pay me later, okay?
Well, you get me going. The current inflation is driven by really two things. One is supply bottlenecks, which is doing a number on a lot of different markets. Less on the labor market, right? The labor market is really what we're talking about here. And the labor market's the labor market. And it's intensely more competitive now. We have the Great Resignation underway. We have people rethinking their commitment to work. Then we have people who are, I could work anywhere. I could work by the lake, in our vacation home. Why don't I just do that? And so the flexibility of the non-pecuniary parts of the labor market are offering opportunities for individuals that haven't existed before. And we've really not seen that play out yet. We're beginning to see it. It will do two things. It will ask the government, through its industry suppliers, to be a bit more flexible in the way that they treat work, so that if you're doing what amounts to staff augmentation or some kind of, help us get our work done, it's going to be harder to get people to come into the office every day to do that. So I think the lessons learned during the pandemic about how it's possible to do that anyway will pay dividends. I also think that the prices will inevitably go up, right? That labor market rates will inevitably go up faster in the near term. I don't know about the long term. When you think about years, like 5 years from now, what will this look like? Well, it somewhat ratchets usually. So you get a ratchet, a jump, and then another jump. That's something that government and industry will have to work out. I just feel like, absent the other flexibilities, the labor market is going to demand higher compensation.
I would tend to agree. And I think government officials have to be thinking about this right now, because ultimately what we seek is the positive outcomes of an acquisition, right? The delivery of that mission, delivery of those requirements that will help us fulfill the mission. And we can't nickel and dime the industry, or else we're going to fail. So I raise it because it is something that I'm not sure if people are carefully thinking. And that was kind of like the topic of discussion that I heard in that podcast. And I do know that GSA has accelerated, economic price adjustments, but is everybody else doing that? Is everybody else looking at their contracts and thinking about that? And this is something that I constantly think about in our profession. When I was CPO, I thought about, we got to be thinking ahead, right? We got to be thinking about the problem that's coming down the pipe, not the one that's here today. That one, too late. Think about the one that's coming, right? And this is a problem that is coming, and it could come to a head, and it could cost us in an industry, in a business where, if you listen to the Small Business Administration, the number of companies coming in to do business with the government, that number has dropped down. I mean, I think I heard a number of a 10% reduction per year of companies coming in, companies that haven't otherwise been doing business with the government. And we certainly have to build up our industrial base, especially where small businesses are concerned. So that's why I raised the question. I appreciate your answer. So I know Will's over there itching to either end the show or ask a question.
No,
because I know the time. I got it.
No, I really like that. I really like the point. The concept of, Soraya, we've talked about this before, that I personally don't believe that the value proposition for contracting officers is to wring every nickel out of a business deal.
Exactly.
That's not the ask. There's nowhere in the FAR that it says do that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
exactly.
That's not the purpose. That's not the value proposition that contracting professionals bring to the market. It is fair and reasonable, which is loosely by design, in my opinion. But it must be reflective of the business deals and then the work that has to follow, because the work really starts when that contract is signed.
Right.
That's when the heavy lifting starts, in my opinion.
That the terminology that I have always used, we're here to cut the best deal. So it isn't about a cheap price or mediocre, so it's about the best deal, depending on what it is you're trying to buy and what your mission outcomes are. Go ahead, Will.
So it is that time. This has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciated it. But as we do, we like to leave our community with some nuggets. So, Tim, as our guest, I'd like for you to have the first guest nugget to share with our community. What would be your nugget to leave with our community based on the conversations that we've had today?
My nugget would be, don't underestimate the value of collaboration. Learn how to collaborate across the fence, over the divide, through the woods, all the way to grandmother's. Collaborate.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Soraya.
Love it. I love it. He stepped on mine though, because I was actually going to say, today you saw the nugget in action. It was about those of us who've been living in the federal space, talking to those of us who've been in the industry space and sharing ideas and working with one another and keeping that dialogue going. I mean, when I think of Tim, I think about, God, probably 25, maybe 30 years that we've kind of known each other in some way, shape, or form and have talked to one another and reached to one another and worked together. So it's all about the networks that you build, how well you collaborate and cooperate with one another, and how well you seek out the opinions of others and the thoughts of others and incorporate them into your thinking, the willingness to adapt. So it's all about networking. It's all about collaboration and cooperation. It's all about industry, government, academia, all of us coming together. I like the, over the woods, under the hills, whatever the heck it was you said, that thing, right? Yeah, that bouncing all over the universe.
That's funny. Well, my nugget is simply this. It has been in my experience that about 9.5 times out of 10, you get exactly what you pay for. Okay. When you think about building business relationships and business models, that contracts that will result in work being done, I think most of the time you get exactly what you pay for. So if you're looking for solutions, think about them in the context of, let's build business solutions that are mutually beneficial, and that profit and fee are neither 4-letter words.
I agree. I 100% agree. I always say, buy the way you would buy at home. I don't hire the cheapest electrician to show up in my house to rewire. And Tim, what a privilege to have you here with us, to chat with you, to have the opportunity. Always, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you guys. I really treasure the opportunity to be with you whenever I can, both of you. And to have both of you at once is truly a privilege.
Well, thank you. So Tim, if someone wanted to get in contact with you, please feel free to give contact information.
Sure. So my email is tcook, COOKE @asigovt.com. And the website is asigovt.com.
Awesome. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for talking acquisition. And we will see you all next week. Be well.
All right. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.